The bright studio lights of the view reflected off the polished table as Blake Shelton was welcomed with applause from the audience and co-hosts alike, the atmosphere buzzing with anticipation for what was expected to be a lively and light-hearted discussion about his latest album and television appearances. Yet from the very first exchange it became clear that the dynamic would not stay playful. As Joy Behar leaned in with a pointed question regarding controversial headlines, Blake's face tightened slightly and a subtle tension began to ripple across the set, the audience sensing that beneath the smiles and pleasantries lay an undercurrent of conflict, a quiet storm brewing that no one could yet fully anticipate. As cameras rolled, capturing every nuance, every hesitation, every flicker of disapproval that would soon escalate into a confrontation for the ages. Joy Behar leaned forward with her signature mix of humor and pointedness, attempting to steer the conversation toward Blake's past remarks and public controversies, and though she opened with a light-hearted tone, Blake's smile faltered, his jaw tightening as he quickly realized the questions were far sharper than anticipated, and the audience felt the change immediately, the usual playful energy shifting into charged tension as whispers rippled across the studio. Blake's eyes narrowed subtly, his body language stiffening while he tried to respond politely, yet each word he uttered carried an edge of frustration, and Joy, sensing his irritation, pressed further with a teasing remark that inadvertently struck a nerve. The cameras capturing the growing unease in every close-up, and the production crew exchanged urgent signals, aware that the delicate balance of live television was tilting dangerously. As Blake's voice rose slightly, measured yet forceful, insisting that some topics were being treated unfairly and that his perspective deserved respect, while the audience, sensing an impending eruption, leaned forward in anticipation, their reactions a mix of fascination and apprehension, the air electric with the collision of two strong personalities unwilling to yield, each word landing with weight, each glance loaded with the unspoken possibility of a showdown that no script could contain. Blake's posture stiffened as Joy continued to press, her tone balancing mockery with seriousness, questioning his opinions and public statements with a persistence that began to fray his patience, and though he attempted to answer calmly, each response seemed to fuel her next pointed remark, the tension spiraling with every exchange, the audience sensing the shift instantly as laughter gave way to murmurs of unease, the energy in the studio thick and almost palpable, while the cameras captured the subtle flickers of emotion across both their faces, every narrowing of the eyes and tightening of the jaw magnified in high definition. Blake's voice grew firmer, carrying both frustration and disbelief, insisting that he had been misunderstood and that certain assumptions about him were unfair, while Joy countered with sharp wit and incredulity, her words landing like sparks across dry tinder, and the friction escalated rapidly, leaving the crew scrambling, unsure how to salvage the segment, and the live audience caught between anticipation and shock, as the seemingly friendly interview teetered on the edge of a dramatic breakdown that neither host nor guest appeared willing to prevent. Blake's expression darkened as Joy pressed harder, her words cutting beneath the surface of casual conversation and exposing the tension that had been simmering from the start, and the audience leaned forward, sensing the danger of a live meltdown, while Blake's hands clenched subtly on the table, his patience fraying with every jest and sharp remark, and though he attempted to redirect with a measured response, Joy's insistence made it clear she had no intention of letting him steer the narrative. The cameras caught the silent exchange, the glances, the subtle tightening of lips, the almost imperceptible rise in Blake's chest as he drew in a long breath, and behind the scenes producers whispered frantically into headsets, the crew poised on edge as they tried to anticipate the outcome of a confrontation spiraling beyond control. The energy in the studio shifting from playful to volatile, the tension stretching taut across the stage like a wire ready to snap, and the audience sat frozen, knowing they were witnessing the exact moment when a normally composed television personality was pushed to the brink by relentless provocation. Blake's hands slammed lightly on the table, the polite composure he had maintained finally cracking as he leaned forward, his voice rising with a mix of frustration and disbelief, telling Joy that her relentless questioning had crossed a line and that he would not tolerate being publicly humiliated on live television, and the audience gasped, some shifting uncomfortably while others held their phones, capturing the dramatic escalation in real time, while the production crew scrambled to anticipate what would happen next, signaling urgently across the set, and Blake's eyes locked on Joy's with an intensity that silenced the studio, a tension so thick it seemed to press against the cameras. Before he abruptly stood, his chair scraping loudly against the floor, muttering sharp words under his breath, and in one swift, decisive motion he stormed off toward the wings, leaving a stunned audience and co-hosts frozen in disbelief, the echo of his departure reverberating through the studio as if marking a permanent fracture in what had started as a seemingly routine interview. The studio fell into stunned silence, the energy that had once been lively now replaced by a thick tension as Blake's departure left an empty space that no one could ignore, and Joy sat back slightly, her expression a mixture of surprise and defensiveness, while the audience shifted in their seats, some whispering nervously, others staring wide-eyed at the spot where Blake had been, and the production crew moved frantically behind the cameras, adjusting angles and cues to salvage the live broadcast, while Kelly tried to maintain composure, her smile tight as she addressed the audience, explaining with careful words that live television can be unpredictable and that emotions sometimes run higher than expected, her tone blending reassurance with subtle authority, the audience responding with polite applause, yet the tension lingered like an invisible weight over the studio, a reminder that the confrontation had irrevocably changed the atmosphere and that this episode would be remembered far beyond its scheduled runtime. Backstage Blake paced rapidly, his frustration visible in every tense movement, his hands gesturing sharply as production staff approached cautiously, trying to calm him down and reminding him that millions were watching live, but he waved them off, insisting he would not be dismissed or ridiculed, his voice carrying fragments of anger and indignation that echoed faintly through the studio halls, while producers whispered urgently into headsets, updating the control room on the unfolding situation. Security staff hovered nearby, unsure whether to intervene or give him space to vent, and every step Blake took seemed to radiate the weight of his simmering frustration, a mixture of pride, exhaustion, and raw emotion, while on stage Kelly and Joy struggled to maintain the broadcast's flow, each second of silence backstage amplifying the tension. On stage, and the audience, aware of the chaos just beyond the cameras, sat in a quiet awe, realizing that they had witnessed more than a heated exchange. They had witnessed a live unraveling of decorum that few could have anticipated. Back on stage Kelly tried to regain control, her smile carefully measured as she leaned into the microphone, addressing the audience with light-hearted humor meant to diffuse the tension, but the nervous energy in the studio was palpable, the audience shifting uncomfortably in their seats, some glancing toward the wings where Blake had stormed off, others whispering to neighbors or discreetly replaying the moment on their phones, while Joy attempted to balance her trademark wit with professionalism, occasionally glancing at Kelly for cues, and the band launched into a playful riff to fill the silence, yet every note seemed charged with the residue of the earlier confrontation, as the cameras captured Kelly's polished exterior while the air itself seemed heavy with unspoken drama, a stark reminder that even carefully planned live television can unravel in moments, leaving both hosts and audience suspended in the aftershock of an unforgettable clash. By the time the commercial break arrived, clips of Blake's dramatic exit had already begun circulating across social media, with viewers dissecting every glance, gesture, and exchange between him and Joy, sparking debates about whether Blake had overreacted or whether Joy had pushed too far, while entertainment news outlets scrambled to post commentary, replaying the confrontation and analyzing the tension in high detail. And backstage producers were inundated with calls from reporters and publicists seeking statements, the incident trending almost instantly as fans and critics alike weighed in, while the live audience whispered among themselves, some replaying the walk-off on their phones, others debating what had triggered the clash, and the viral momentum of the footage ensured that this episode of The View would not simply air and fade. It had transformed into a cultural talking point, a moment of live television drama that would dominate headlines and online conversations for days. As the cameras returned from commercial, Kelly and Joy addressed the audience with carefully measured tones, attempting to restore a sense of normalcy while acknowledging the unexpected events that had just unfolded, Kelly's smile firm but her eyes revealing the strain of holding the broadcast together, Joy nodding along as she offered light-hearted commentary to bridge the gap. And though polite applause rippled through the audience, the absence of Blake was a constant reminder of the confrontation that had left the studio tense, the crew working frantically behind the scenes to adjust timing and camera angles, while the audience whispered and speculated, aware that they had witnessed a rare moment of live television unpredictability. And even as the show pressed on, the echo of Blake's departure lingered like an invisible weight over the set, a defining and unforgettable climax that would dominate headlines, social media, and public conversations long after the broadcast ended. By the next morning, headlines were ablaze with coverage of Blake's dramatic exit, social media threads dissecting every moment from his tense expressions to the precise words that sparked the clash, while pundits debated whether Joy had crossed a line or if Blake had overreacted, and clips of the walk-off circulated endlessly on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, with fans offering commentary, memes, and heated debates. And backstage, The View's producers were fielding a flood of calls from journalists seeking statements and clarifications as the incident dominated entertainment news cycles, while Kelly and Joy appeared on other platforms to offer their perspectives, carefully balancing professionalism with subtle acknowledgement of the tension, and the studio audience from the original broadcast became a source of viral reaction videos, the entire episode cementing itself as a defining moment in live television drama, remembered for the raw emotion, the unexpected confrontation, and the way a simple interview had exploded into a cultural talking point with ripple effects far beyond the studio walls.